Today we are here to present to you all the Detroiters' Bill of Rights, which is founded on 8 core values, 8 core principles. And I'm going to give a quick just list them all out, but our speakers today are going to go in those in depth. So it's about the right to water and making sure everyone has clean, safe, drinkable water. It's about the right to safety, to make sure that we can live free from fear of our neighbors as well as, city departments. It's about the right to recreation and making sure everyone has an opportunity to be in green space and to have parks and such close to their homes. It's about the right to mobility and access, to make sure everyone can afford public transit and that transit is accessible to all of us regardless of our abilities. It's about the right to live free from discrimination and recognizing that immigrants are a key part of our communities as well as folks with disabilities, and that we need to make sure that we have an office and commissions that are established to serve their needs. It's about the right to housing and making sure that everyone has access to safe, habitable, clean housing. And it's about the right to fulfilling our overall basic needs and the budgeting principles that we must embed in our charter to make sure that everyone has the right to opportunity to fulfill and live up to their greatest potential. So I'm so honored to be here and honored to have worked with these groups over the last couple of months. This really came together in response to George Floyd's murder and the civil unrest and the demands from community groups across the city saying, we need systemic change. Our struggle has been rooted in oppression and in racism and in discriminatory policies, and now is the time to have bold leadership to step up and to change those and embed these values and principles into our charter, which is basically like our city's constitution. And so we are so happy to have worked with these groups over the last couple months, and I am going to turn it over to several of them to talk about this in more detail. All my papers are wet, I'm so sorry. To talk about how we define racial equity and how we define safety in the city, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tawana Petty from Detroit Community Technology Project. Tawana?
Thank you everyone. I'm really happy to be here even in the rain. Just like this moment, we have stood firm together throughout any type of obstacle that has come in our way. So we came together as community organizations, as impacted residents, as city government officials to come together and create this Detroiter Bill of Rights because we knew that it was a time to put praxis behind our words and to put policy behind our deeds. And so the racial equity definition that we have adopted through our community agreement comes out of several, almost 2 years worth of work with the Actionable Institute for Social Policy, which convenes stakeholders across several cities and several governmental institutions to develop a definition around racial equity. And I'm going to read you part of our community agreement. Racial equity is a condition where one's racial identity no longer influences how one fares in society. This includes the creation of racially just policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages, and the elimination of structures that reinforce differential experiences and outcomes by race. We are dedicated to creating systems that dismantle anti-Blackness, center Black Detroiters, and create equitable access to and distribution of resources for the most vulnerable people in Detroit. This includes, but is not limited to, LGBTQ community, undocumented community, immigrant community, disability community, indigenous communities, people experiencing economic injustice and living in poverty, and communities of color. We join the global struggle against colonization, white supremacy, and brutality in defense of Black lives to win our collective liberation. And it is for this reason that we understand that the conflation between surveillance and safety has created inequitable policies like facial recognition that we must resist.
Thank you, Tawana. So to expand a little bit on the right to safety and what that means, I'm going to call up John Sloan III with Black Lives Matter Detroit chapter to talk about that.
Thank you and good morning. I had a 3-hour speech prepared, but because of the rain, I think I'm going to do my best to cut it down. I am really appreciative of everybody here, especially of Councilwoman Raquel Castaneda-Lopez and Sheffield's offices. for the work that they have done and for the commitment to listen and to act. You know, people talk often about what it means to be safe, but nobody ever asks us to define what safety is for ourselves. And so we recognize, thank you, we recognize that this Bill of Rights is not an end, but it's a beginning. It's a link in a chain that's going to push us towards liberation. And when I first heard that word liberation as a youth, I didn't know what it meant, right? Because I grew up in a country whose textbooks told me that I was liberated already. I grew up in a country whose textbooks told me that I was already free, and I was so free that I didn't need to ask for my freedom anymore. I didn't need to demand my freedom anymore. I didn't need to march or walk for my freedom anymore. But then you walk out on the streets and you realize that that isn't true. That what those textbooks are telling you is a lie, and that this system is rotten at the root. And so we want to thank everybody here for the recognition that this system doesn't need reformation, but it needs a redefinition. It needs us to ask ourselves what it means to be safe and to consider all of these topics and issue areas in concert as they work together for housing and for safety and for the liberation of all of our people in the city. Real quickly before I go on for too long, the important part of this Bill of Rights from our standpoint where it comes to safety and police reform means that we are going to demand that the city abides by UN principles regarding the use of chemical weapons and riot control, that we are going to demand public accountability and hearings when the city is going to accept public funding for increased militarization of their police force, that we are going to demand reform to the Board of Police Commissioners to make the system more equitable for all Detroiters. We could all talk for a long time about what we've seen and what we've been through and what we've encountered as members of this community. But I, for one, stand in gratitude for everybody standing up here behind me, for all the men and women and non-binary individuals in this city that work tirelessly every day because they recognize that this system is one that needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. So I thank you very much for all your participation today and look forward to using this moment as a jumping off point and a continuation of the work that's been done before us and the work that has yet to become. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Good morning. I am so honored and grateful to be here. I want to first just start off by really lifting up and commending my colleague here, Raquel Castaneda-Lopez, and the hard work that her office and her staff and really each of the organizations, I was there on some of the Zoom calls, but I know how much hard work you all put in to get this document going and to have an inclusive document that's not just the voice of elected officials, but of the community. Takes time and it takes effort. And so I commend the work of each and every one of you all. I believe this document really speaks to our values, and to have it embedded in the city charter, which, as my colleague mentioned, is our Constitution, is so important. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about today is surveillance, and I want to bring up Mr. Arthur Bowman from BYP 100 and Greenlight Black Futures, who's going to talk about how every Detroit resident is entitled to live in safe communities and has the right to live free of threat and or harm from one another and also from city agencies. So, Mr. Bowman, if you could please come forward.
Good morning. Thank you so much for coming out and being here. Greenlight Black Futures and the BYP 100 Detroit has been resisting the hyper-surveillance of Project Greenlight and facial recognition technology for a couple years now. And we're so grateful to Pro Tem Sheffield and to Councilmember Lopez for giving us the opportunity to turn that into some real concrete policy proposals. We believe that surveillance does not keep us safe. We keep us safe. Well-resourced communities keep us safe. And we believe that this Detroiters Bill of Rights is going to be a step towards not only getting our communities the resources that we need to survive and to thrive, but also fostering new relationships in the community so that we do become each other's business. We do become each other's magnitude and bond. And, we believe that this is only the first step in establishing a lasting culture of safety in Detroit that reduces the crime problem through, resources and community engagement. So towards that end, we're really happy to support Pro Tem Sheffield's ordinance for community oversight over surveillance. We believe that, if you give the community a choice, if you empower the communities to determine whether or not we want these cameras in our community or we want resources and relationships with each other, they will choose the latter. Thank you.
All right. Every Detroit resident has a right to affordable, habitable, safe, and accessible housing. Amen. To ensure this right, we are demanding that the city's affordability be based on the city's AMI, not Livonia and Warren, but Detroit's AMI. We also are ensuring that we want the Affordable Housing Trust Fund embedded in the city charter. And I would now like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Disla from Detroit Action.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Disla. I'm the organizing director for Detroit Action. Detroit Action is an organization for Black and brown Detroiters making changes in their communities. We're facing 75,000 evictions in Michigan statewide. That ain't right. And this is why the Detroit courts acted to extend the moratorium. We know it's not enough. We have a charter amendment calling for affordable housing. It's a start. We're looking for other solutions such as rental assistance. Detroit residents are deciding between food, rent, childcare, and medical expenses. And this is not a new story. We believe in centering the most impacted and fighting against anti-Black, white supremacist, capitalist system that continues to profit during this pandemic. That ain't right. We will continue to demand change during this time and beyond. Thank you.
Keep it short. Every Detroit resident has the right to water, to clean and affordable water and sanitation for personal and domestic use. Let's now bring up Ms. Erin Met from Great Lakes Environmental Law Center, along with Ms. Nicole Hill, organizer for the People's Water Board.
Hi everyone, my name is Erin Meddy. I'm an attorney at the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center. For many Detroit residents and others across the United States, water has increasingly become unaffordable. In a city where nearly 40% of residents live in poverty, many Detroiters must choose between their water bill and other necessary payments. In order to provide a long-term solution to this crisis of water unaffordability and shutoffs here in Detroit, we are recommending a charter amendment that will champion water affordability by establishing principles to guide decision-making that are grounded in racial and economic equity and public health, and establishing a clear water affordability framework. Most importantly, we want to establish that all Detroiters have a legal right to safe and affordable water, regardless of income. Water is life and a basic human right. We must ensure that every Detroiter has access to safe, affordable drinking water.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Hill. I'm an organizer with the People's Water Board Coalition, and I'm an impacted Detroit resident. We are tired of people making a decision for us to play Russian roulette with our lives when it comes to water. Water is a basic essential right that everyone is entitled to, and we will appreciate this Bill of Rights being taken into play to ensure that people can enjoy clean and affordable water regardless of race, sexual orientation, and the ability to pay, disability. It doesn't matter. Everyone deserves a right to water, and it's our basic survival instinct to know that if we cannot get it, we will fight for it. And this Bill of Rights is a begin and a step in that direction. And I just want to thank both of our council people for all the hard work that they've did, along with these organizations, to get this into the process of being done. And we appreciate it. And we're going to keep fighting for this because water is definitely our right.
Here comes the sun, y'all. We got this. Next, just want to call out the right and access to mobility and to transit. So this is all about making sure that public transit is affordable and establishing a low-income fare in the city of Detroit. This is about making sure that there's oversight and strengthening the ddot Advisory Transit Commission and making sure it's accessible. So I'd like to call to the stage Mr. Renard, who's going to, from the People's Platform, to talk about that.
Good morning. My name's Renard Mishensky. I am a lifelong ddot essential bus rider, residing in District 2 of Detroit and a transit justice organizer with the transit justice team and the Detroit People's Platform. I want to thank Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield and Councilmember Castaneda-Lopez for their collective leadership on the issue of racial justice in our city and their commitment to include diverse voices from the community in those discussions. I am here this morning to lift up the call for transit justice. Today, on behalf of all essential bus riders in Detroit, and that includes individuals that rely primarily on public transportation to move around our city, to get to our jobs, to get to school, visit the doctor, and make other social services and personal appointments. Detroit is the nation's largest majority black city, and ddot ridership reflects that reality. As a result, majority black Detroit bus riders experience ddot systemic inequities that are rooted in systemic and structural racism. Winning and sustaining a just and equitable public transit services has historically been at the intersection of our most important black civil rights and racial justice struggles in this country. In that spirit, our transit justice work is rooted in the movement work of Mrs. Rosa Parks and other essential bus riders from the Montgomery bus boycott. ddot bus riders have experienced racial inequity in the public transit system at the same time that many Detroiters have come to rely on public transportation. In the face of outrageously high costs to operate a personal vehicle in the city, including predatory auto insurance rates. Essential bus riders here in Detroit have witnessed increased support for transit services designed for the benefit of choice riders. Those in the city and region are mostly white, affluent, and use public transit as a choice than rather as a necessary service. Examples include millions of public dollars invested in the queue line that remains on lockdown behind an iron gate. Fast bus service designed to move suburbanites along certain commercial and business corridors. These investments of our tax dollars are happening at a time that many ddot essential bus riders experience long wait times, declining neighborhood bus service, and a department that refuses to hear our voice. Detroiters deserve a public transit system that is publicly managed and controlled, is safe, reliable, affordable, and ensures that essential bus riders can move around their city without undue burden. In century majority black Detroit, the Transit Justice Team and the Detroit People's Platform calls for the following. We support the inclusion of a low-income fare in the proposed revised city charter to ensure that Detroiters can have access to the bus service regardless of their ability to pay. We call for the inclusion of a representative body of ddot bus riders that can advocate for quality operations, rights of passengers, budget accountability, and decision-making. Our bus service is a collective public asset and service that must be accountable to the people. We call for the end of green light surveillance program and the ban of facial recognition technology in all city-owned and operated buildings, especially at the Rosa Parks Transit Center and the State Fair Transit Center. We support the proposed amendment to the revised city charter of Detroit. We, Detroiters, have the right to access and mobility. Every Detroit resident, regardless of their zip code, has the right to safe, accessible, and affordable public transit. And it's all right, and policies that ensure the equitable options whether you choose to walk, bike, and drive or use rideshare. Thank you.
See, I knew we finished in the light, you all, right? So next, when we talk about all these rights, we have to recognize the unique needs of our communities, of our disability communities. And so that's why we must create an Office of Disability Affairs and a Disabilities Justice Commission. So I want to call up Mr. Jeffrey Nolish with the Detroit Disability Power to explain that for us.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Nolish. I work for Detroit Disability Power as the policy director. Thank you to the council members for their leadership and for the initiative today. In the city of Detroit, there are over 126,000 people living with disabilities. This includes people with hearing, vision, ambulatory, cognitive, self-care, independent living, and mental health difficulties and disabilities. The disability community is an intersectional community. Over 100,000 people with disabilities in the city of Detroit are Black or African American, and the majority of people living with disabilities in Detroit are women. When we talk about the recession or the pandemic or widespread racism and oppression, people with disabilities are oftentimes the most disadvantaged. At Detroit Disability Power, we believe the people closest to the problem should be closest to the solution, and this includes resources and power. To that end, we rise today in support of the Detroit Bill of Rights and in the support of a proposal to create the Disability Justice Commission as well as an Office of Disability Affairs. The Disability Justice Commission will serve as a policy-making body and a guidance body that will help to raise the level of disability consciousness throughout the city government. The Office of Disability Affairs will serve as a proactive, public-facing, fully funded and fully staffed one-stop shop for all things disability-related, and it will champion people with disabilities each and every day, in every room, at every table, and on every screen. Paul Wellstone, one of my favorite politicians, said, we all do better when we all do better, and all includes disability. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Miss Baba Baxter, and I think everybody knows Baba. If you don't, you should, who is here to talk about a resident in the city of Detroit living with disabilities.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm old school, so I have to wipe this mic down. My immunity system's not as strong as some of the young people. But I'm glad to be here representing especially those who cannot be here, but are certainly a valuable asset and part of this Detroit community, but often overlooked, often misunderstood and overlooked. And here we are on the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, otherwise known as the ADA, and we have a long ways to go, folks. And the only way we're going to get there is by what you see up here: unity, relationships. People have to understand what it's like to need accommodations. We're not asking for equality. We're asking for equity. There's a big difference. If you don't understand the difference, look it up. You need to understand. And as a person who is impacted on a daily basis by some of the inequities that occur in this city, I'm proud to be here today championing what I consider the foundation for any type of constitution. The United States Constitution has a Bill of Rights. And that Constitution has to live up to those rights. And we're hoping that, well, we're not just hoping, we're demanding. We're demanding. That's right. We're demanding that the rights and the understanding for people with disabilities are considered as a part of the foundation of this city. That's the only way this city is going to become a great city, is if it becomes a city for all the people. And so there's a lot of things that I could say, but I don't have time to say that because my other colleagues have a lot of things to say, but we have a long ways to go, and I appreciate Councilpersons Sheffield and Castaneda-Lopez for leading the way, and for all the leadership that you see up here, and for a seat at this table. And so I want to thank you. Thank you very much. Peace and love.
So we all deserve the right to live free in the city, free from discrimination. So I would like to call off Mr. Haig Oshigan with New Michigan Media, a key member of Detroit's Immigration Task Force, to talk about the rights that immigrants deserve to have as members and residents in the city of Detroit.
My name is Haig Oshigan. I am a director of New Michigan Media, a professor at Wayne State, and an immigrant to the United States. Every Detroit resident has the right to clean water, responsible policing, accessible transportation, environmental protections, fair treatment of people with disabilities, and affordable housing. And for immigrants, the same rights that we are all entitled to: freedom from discrimination and equal access and opportunity. We are proposing the creation in the city charter of the Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Commission and the Office of Immigrant Affairs. The Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Commission will work to safeguard the civil liberties of Detroit's immigrants, refugee, and asylum seeker communities. It will work with the city and other partners to ensure that our immigrant citizens have equal access to and participation in Detroit's social, economic, and civic life, and that every Detroit resident, regardless of his or her immigration status, is guaranteed the same fundamental rights and protection of the law from discrimination. Through community outreach, policy recommendations, and oversight, the Commission will be the activist voice of the immigrant community with the city of Detroit. Along with the Commission, we are proposing the Office of Immigrant Affairs. This office will be the executive agent of all the initiatives that the Commission pursues, accountable to the Commission and to the city. The office will advise the mayor and council, will increase the accessibility of city programs, benefits, and services to immigrants, and will help ensure that the city responds to the needs and civil rights and concerns of immigrants. We should all be committed to the success of all our communities, of their civil rights, of their civil liberties, of their economic and social inclusion and empowerment. This package of bills is the means to that end. It is the institutional safeguard to power our ideas of fairness and justice for all Detroiters. You know, we create charters, commissions, rules. We create laws not for what we see today, but for what we can imagine for tomorrow. Everyone should have access to services, opportunity, and equal rights, but they don't. This package of bills, the Detroiters' Bill of Rights, is a step in that direction, into the future, into what we want for this city, into the future that we can imagine today for Detroit. You know, we are only as strong as those that stand with us. And here behind me and together, this is the strength of our community. This is the community that has suffered, this is the community that has fought together, and this is the community that will succeed together as well. Thank you.
I just have to say personally, it's so beautiful to see everyone in the same space because, you know, we've all been fighting in silos, and it's the power we have to work collectively is just really, really beautiful. So I just want to thank you all again. Next, I want to call up, who just arrived here, Mr. Justin Owenu. When we talk about transit, when we talk about housing, when we talk about water, we have to make sure, right, that everyone can breathe clean air, that everyone has clean water to drink, that our homes are built on clean soil that doesn't have contaminations. And so the fight for environmental justice is tied to the fight for racial justice and economic justice. So I'd like to bring Mr. Justin Owenu to talk about EJ.
Good morning. My name is Justin Onwenu. I'm an environmental justice organizer with the Sierra Club. I'm excited today about the Detroiters' Bill of Rights because clean water and clean air is a fundamental human right. Far too often, black communities, brown communities are located right next to refineries and brownfields and toxic waste facilities. And this has a direct impact on people's ability to breathe, on people's ability to live a dignified life, and on people's human rights. And so being a city that guarantees people's access to environmental justice, it's important. And it's important for more than one reason. Number one is that children can't grow up and fulfill their honest and full potential unless we're ensuring things like clean air. Seniors can't live a comfortable life, can't live a comfortable retirement if they're concerned about having to pay for medical prescriptions because of the asthma and the cancer that's coming from pollution. And so this package of bills, the Detroiters' Bill of Rights, guarantees access to environmental justice by doing three things. Number one, establishing an environmental justice commission. We need to make sure that Detroiters are at the table and have direct oversight of the laws that govern environmental justice in this city. Number two, we need to include environmental justice in every aspect of city law, of city administration. And so making sure that there's an Office of Environmental Justice and Sustainability. Being an environmentalist is not just about saving trees, it's not just about saving animals, although that's important. It's about saving all of us. It's about making sure all of us have access to clean air and that we're able to breathe and live a dignified life. So establishing an Office of Environmental Justice is extremely important. And lastly, establishing an environmental justice and public health fund is extremely important. We need to make sure that when polluters and when people violate our human rights, that they are the ones that are paying to make up for the harm that they've done. Far too often, people get away with poisoning our air, poisoning our drinking water, and then we're, as taxpayers, supposed to pay for it. That's not right. And so establishing a public health fund so that when polluters pollute our air, they're paying to clean it up. So that when polluters are polluting our water, that they're paying to clean it up. So when people who are harming our children, harming our family members, harming our community, that they are paying to clean it up. And so establishing a public health fund is extremely important. So again, we're here to establish and make sure that water, that air, that clean land is a fundamental human right, and this Detroiters' Bill of Rights does that. So I'm extremely excited to support this package and look forward to making sure that environmental justice is a cornerpiece of the Commission's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So the last couple ones that I'm going to speak about briefly are about the right to recreation and what that means. So actually when we were talking about this one and it came up in conversation, it's about when we're out door knocking and listening to folks in the street, they talk about safety and they talk about opportunities for young people and safe spaces where they can go on walks with their families and they can sit and they can enjoy and be in the presence of nature and the value and importance of that. So this right is about adopting the World Health Organization standards around urban green space and ensuring that there's a minimum of space per person in the city of Detroit. It's about creating a comprehensive network of urban green spaces, of parks, of recreation spaces, and making sure that that plan is updated every 5 years and that there's public input in that process. So the right to recreation is directly tied to our overall mental well-being, physical well-being, and the safety and quality of life that we have in our community. So that is definitely one of our Detroiter Bill of Rights we want to see pushed forward. And last but not least is a comprehensive one based on the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Declaration number 25, and that is the entitlement to food, to shelter, to have our basic social security and social needs met. And this is based on budgeting principles that we will be putting forward to the Charter Commission that say at a minimum we must be investing in our health department. At a minimum we must be investing in our recreation department. At a minimum, we must be investing in our transit department. At a minimum, we must be supporting the Office of Disability Affairs, the Immigration Office, the Environmental Justice Commission, et cetera, et cetera. So we are excited to put forward this innovative and bold proposal to embed into our city's charter the funding needed to support all of these other rights to ensure that we can have a good quality of life. So with that, I want to call up Charter Commissioner Denzel McCampbell, who is here with us today to talk a little bit about his stance.
Oh, wow. All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you, appreciate you. My name is Denzel McCampbell. I'm a Charter Revision Commissioner, and I just want to thank the numerous community members, advocates, groups, as well as Council President Pro Tem Sheffield and Councilmember Castaneda-Lopez for this extremely important effort for a Bill of Rights for Detroiters. In 2018, Detroiters voted to open up the charter for revision. Since then, the Charter Revision Commission has embarked on a process to garner community input on how our city government will operate for the next 16 to 20 years. This process is about uplifting the priorities of residents so that everyone can have the ability to thrive and have a good quality of life. What we've heard today echoes what we've heard from residents around the city. Racial equity, clean water, clean air, disability rights, immigrant rights, housing, transportation, fighting against hyper-surveillance and mass incarceration and criminalization, demanding funding for the programs that actually keep us safe, and many more. These things aren't new, but they've been ignored by many of the leaders in our city, and today we're saying enough is enough. I fully support the Detroit Bill of Rights, and I know many of my colleagues on the commission do as well. I look forward to pushing this as we continue the revision process. I do want to note for folks that the deadline to submit proposals and revisions is this Friday on the 31st. So if you have more things that you want to put forward, please submit that online at the Detroit Charter, or 2018 DetroitCharter.com. And as we continue this revision process, please reach out to the other commissioners. Please let them know that we demand a Detroit Bill of Rights. And thank you so much for being here. And hope you all stay well, stay safe, and stay dry. Thank you.
All right, we will now bring up Tristan Taylor from Detroit Will Breathe. We've seen him all in the streets for the last probably, 40 or so days? 60 days demanding justice, so we want to bring him up to speak to his support for the Bill of Rights.
Thank you. I just want to say not only thank you to Sheffield and Lopez for their leadership, but thank you for all the groups that are standing and have been fighting for years to put these issues forward. And I'm just really happy that we're at a moment where the momentum of the national movement for Black and brown lives allows us to put forward such policies. And I think it's particularly important given the attacks that we see on our basic constitutional rights throughout the federal government in cooperation, unfortunately, with certain local leaders, that it's really important that these rights are enshrined in a constitution in the city, that they can't be taken away. And the only thing that I would emphasize is that to make sure that these things are real and the things that we need them to be, we need to continue to keep vigilant and maintain our presence in the streets, right? Because the only thing that is going to matter is making sure, because we know they're going to try to take it away from us every chance that they get. We know they're going to try to nullify us every chance that they get, and we're just have to continue to make sure that our power, that we understand it, is collective and is collectively expressed in these streets where they can't control or contain us as much as they might. Unfortunately today, and I thank City Council for passing a resolution against Operation Legend and Operation Relentless Pursuit. Unfortunately, we have a mayor who has too much power given to him by the charter and is able to do as he please. And his deputy chief of his deputy mayor, who's also chief of police, is going to be cooperating with the federal police, which is shameful. They're actually supposed to be announcing plans at 11 o'clock today, which we're going to say hello to the federal agents coming in Detroit and let them know that they're not welcome. But I look forward to continuing to establish deeper roots with the people who have been fighting so hard, and I am just happy to be able to add whatever I can, and Detroit will breathe to that, because in the end, the main thing has to be the main thing, which is right, fighting for equality for all of us, right? Is making sure that all the work that we put in, because it's work, actually comes to fruition. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
All right, we fired up? Fired up! Fired up! All right, you all, so this is really just now a call to action. I want to encourage everyone here to really spread the message to Detroiters all over the city how important it is to get these values embedded in our Constitution. And so I just want to call to action everyone who is watching, streaming online throughout the city of Detroit. Please call your charter members. Let them know that you support the People's Bills of Rights. And we are looking forward to each and every one of you joining forces with us as we continue to fight every day to make sure these values are lived up to. So we thank you all for being here. Going to bring up my colleague, Councilmember Castaneda-Lopez again. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you all, and I would just want to say today is not the end, it is just the beginning. And so we call on you to sign. We're launching an online petition today that we want you to sign on to. We want to give thanks to the nearly 90 organizations that signed on to a letter already that we'll be submitting to the Charter Commission saying we call for you to adopt the Detroiters Bill of Rights. But we'll launch the petition and share it on social media so you can sign on to that. In addition, this is just one piece of part of the larger movement. We have a series of resolutions, several which have already been passed. So I want to call out the ones that have already been passed. Yesterday, we passed a resolution to drop charges against protesters participating in civil disobedience. As my colleague said, we also passed a resolution in opposition of relentless pursuit and called for the removal of federal agents. We passed a resolution to declare gun health as a health crisis in the city, gun violence, as a health crisis in the city of Detroit. And we supported resolutions put forward by colleagues to reestablish affirmative action and to adopt Detroit AMI in the city of Detroit. So moving forward, you will see memos coming out, you'll see resolutions coming out, you'll see legislation coming out, but this is the first piece of really embedding and getting our core values into the city's constitution, the charter, and adopting the Detroiters Bill of Rights. So with that, I think we are good to go. I want to just give a shout out. We have met for the past 6 weeks, and I want to give a special shout out to the groups that have been on Zoom calls with us from 6 o'clock to 8:30 when we're trying to eat, sweating to death, cats crawling all over. So to Jennifer, Detroit Action, Arthur, BYP, John from BLM, Tawana from DCTP, and 10 other organizations. I can't even remember them all, but many others who were on these calls for late nights where I was not very patient all the time. So I just want to thank you for all your work that you've put into this. And so with that, I think we can turn it over to questions if there's questions from reporters. But I think that's it. Yeah. Yes, sure. Do you want to come up? Do you want to come over here and share? Sure.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Austin. I'm represent the ADA community along with Detroit People's Platform. And I just wanted to say that I just received a glove from ddot to ride the bus. It needs to be established and also clear with the drivers and the department that we're entitled to ride the front of the bus. I did a test all this week and only 2 buses let me in the front. So it should be inclusive. I shouldn't have to wait in the mail during COVID to get something that is vitally needed for me. Now being part of the ADA community, it is my inalienable right. The taxes that are taken out of my check, the taxes that put up beautiful structures in this city, I'm entitled and inalienable right to it. So I'm asking that the city charter and also city council make sure that all these gloves go out to the ADA community immediately. You have our information, you have our data, and make sure that I'm able to ride the bus. And please, also, Mr. Oglesby, if you're listening right now, make sure all my community members get this glove and send them dispatch today in the mail, this glove to ride the bus. Thank you.
Any questions for any of the speakers from any of the media here? Okay, I think we're good then. Thank you.